Beyond the shifting sands and ancient whispers lies a civilization built on secrets, where monumental pyramids pierce the sky and gods walk among mortals. Prepare to journey back to a land of unparalleled ingenuity and enduring mystery, where every artifact tells a story and every hieroglyph guards a truth. This is ancient Egypt, a world waiting to unfold its deepest secrets, but only if you dare to listen. The Nile River, a ribbon of life through the desert, flowed with a consistent, gentle rhythm, its annual inundation, a predictable embrace that brought both sustenance and tranquility to the ancient lands. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, soft sounds would drift across the water, the distant call of a night bird, the rustle of reeds along the bank, perhaps the quiet murmur of voices from a nearby village, all blending into a peaceful symphony that lulled the weary to sleep. This rhythmic flooding was not a destructive force, but a benevolent cycle, depositing rich, dark silt onto the land, transforming the arid earth into fertile black soil, ideal for cultivating crops, a gift that ensured the prosperity and very survival of the civilization. The river itself, winding its way from the southern cataracts to the Mediterranean Sea, naturally divided the elongated country into two distinct realms: Upper Egypt in the south, a land of narrow valleys and high cliffs, and Lower Egypt in the north, a broad delta fanning out like a lotus flower. More than just a geographical divider, the Nile served as ancient Egypt's primary highway, a silent, powerful artery upon which all life and commerce traveled, carrying everything from massive stone blocks for temples to daily provisions for bustling cities, its currents and winds dictating the pace of life and travel. In the tranquil depths of Egyptian creation myths, the world did not explode into being but rather emerged peacefully from the swirling waters of Nun, a primordial abyss of calm. From this serene void, the creator god Atum, or sometimes Ra, brought forth existence, a gentle unfolding rather than a violent genesis. Above this nascent world arched the graceful form of Nun, the sky goddess, her star-dusted body stretched across the heavens. Each evening, she would softly swallow the sun, guiding it through her celestial body during the night, only to give gentle birth to it again at dawn, a continuous cycle of serene renewal. Among the pantheon, Thoth, the ibis-headed god, embodied wisdom and peaceful knowledge, his silent, thoughtful presence overseeing the moon, writing, and the measured passage of time, always seeking balance and understanding. Then there was Hathor, the radiant goddess of love, beauty, music, and motherhood, whose presence brought joy and harmony, her gentle melodies echoing through the hearts of mortals and gods alike. For the ancient Egyptians, the afterlife was not a place of fear or turmoil, but a peaceful journey through the Duat, a celestial realm where the deceased, if found worthy, would join the gods in an eternal, serene existence, a continuation of life in a realm of perfect tranquility. The pyramids, those monumental testaments to eternity, were not haphazard constructions, but were conceived with meticulous precision, their designs carefully planned and their dimensions precisely measured long before the first stone was ever laid. Their distinctive pyramidal shape carried profound spiritual significance, symbolizing the primeval mound from which creation itself emerged, and serving as a celestial ramp for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the heavens and join the undying stars. In their pristine state, these colossal structures were clad in a brilliant casing of smooth, polished white limestone, which would have gleamed blindingly under the desert sun, reflecting its light across the landscape. Within their vast interiors, hidden chambers and intricate passages were designed with an astonishing understanding of thermal dynamics, maintaining a remarkably stable and cool temperature, a testament to the builder's advanced knowledge. Furthermore, these architectural marvels were meticulously aligned with the cardinal directions and significant celestial bodies, their faces often oriented to true north, and their internal shafts pointing towards specific stars or constellations, connecting the earthly realm of the pharaoh with the eternal cosmic order. Daily life within the ancient Egyptian palaces unfolded with a serene rhythm, a world of refined comfort and measured activity. Lush palace gardens provided verdant oases, featuring tranquil pools filled with fish and lotus flowers, shaded by rows of date palms and sycamore trees, offering a cool respite from the desert heat. Soft, melodic music often filled the air, played on lyres, harps, and flutes, providing a gentle backdrop to courtly life and royal entertainment. The architecture of these grand residences was ingeniously designed to maximize comfort, incorporating high ceilings, strategic window placement, and sometimes even wind-catching devices to circulate cool air, thus creating natural cooling systems that ensured a comfortable environment. Within these elegant settings, the royal family enjoyed periods of leisure, engaging in activities such as board games, hunting in nearby preserves, or simply relaxing by the cool waters of their private gardens, their lives a blend of ceremonial duties and peaceful personal moments. Ancient Egyptian farming techniques, though seemingly simple, were remarkably sophisticated, relying on the predictable bounty of the Nile's annual inundation and the ingenuity of its people. Gardens were not merely utilitarian spaces, but often places of beauty and contemplation, adorned with common flowers like the fragrant blue lotus, papyrus, and mandrake, alongside various herbs used for medicinal purposes and culinary flavor. Fruit trees including figs, dates, pomegranates, and grapes were carefully cultivated, their sweet harvests providing sustenance and luxury. The lifeline of these thriving gardens was an intricate system of irrigation, utilizing shadufs and canals to draw water from the Nile and distribute it precisely to the thirsty crops, a testament to their advanced water management. The agricultural year followed the natural rhythms of the Nile with distinct seasons for inundation, planting, and harvest, each phase bringing its own rhythm of labor and eventual reward. Ancient Egyptian clothing, particularly for the elite, was crafted from soft, finely woven linen, a breathable and comfortable fabric, ideally suited to the warm climate, often draped elegantly around the form. Adornments were plentiful and exquisite, with jewelry made from gold, silver, and a vibrant array of precious and semi-precious stones, such as lapis lazuli, turquoise, and carnelian, each piece meticulously crafted to signify status and beauty. The application of makeup was an elaborate ritual, with kohl used to define the eyes, not only for aesthetics, but also to protect against the harsh glare of the sun, and various unguents and oils applied to soften and scent the skin. Hairstyles were often elaborate, with many individuals, especially royalty, wearing intricate wigs made from human hair or plant fibers, sometimes adorned with gold beads or floral decorations. Royal regalia, including crowns like the shent, a combination of the white and red crown symbolizing unified Egypt, and various scepters, were not just symbols of power, but also carefully designed objects of beauty and tradition. Ancient Egyptian healing practices were a fascinating blend of practical observation, herbal remedies, and spiritual beliefs, often administered with a serene and methodical approach. A wide array of medicinal herbs, such as frankincense for inflammation, willow bark for pain relief, and aloe vera for skin ailments, were meticulously catalogued and employed, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of their properties. Egyptian doctors were highly respected and specialized, often trained in specific areas of medicine, their knowledge passed down through generations within temple schools. Temple healing centers, dedicated to deities like Sekhmet or Imhotep, served as places of recovery and spiritual solace, where patients could receive treatment alongside divine intervention. The overarching concept of wellness in ancient Egypt encompassed not just the physical body, but also mental and spiritual harmony, believing that a balanced life was essential for enduring health. Cats held a uniquely revered position in Egyptian culture, not only as beloved companions and effective pest controllers, but also as sacred animals, particularly associated with the goddess Bastet, embodying grace and protection. The ibis, a long-legged wading bird, was another deeply respected creature, linked to the god Thoth, symbolizing wisdom and intellect, often seen peacefully foraging along the Nile's banks. The practice of animal mummification was widespread, extending beyond beloved pets, to include sacred animals offered as votives to the gods, meticulously prepared and wrapped, sometimes in vast catacombs. Temple animals, such as sacred bulls or crocodiles, were often kept within temple precincts, cared for with utmost reverence, believed to be living manifestations of the gods themselves. Various animal gods, from the falcon-headed Horus to the crocodile-headed Sobek, represented different aspects of the divine, their presence woven into the fabric of daily life and religious belief, fostering a deep respect for the natural world. The creation of pottery in ancient Egypt was a craft that combined practical skill with artistic expression, beginning with the careful selection and preparation of clay, often sourced from the rich deposits along the Nile, which was then cleaned and kneaded to achieve the perfect consistency. Potters employed various techniques for forming vessels, from simple hand-building methods like coiling to the use of slow wheels that allowed for more symmetrical and refined shapes. Decoration often involved painting geometric patterns, stylized plants, or religious symbols onto the dried clay before firing, sometimes followed by the application of a smooth slip or glaze to enhance both beauty and durability. Pottery served countless uses in daily life, from storage jars for grain and water, cooking pots and eating utensils, to cosmetic containers and funerary offerings. In religious ceremonies, special vessels were used for libations, offerings, and rituals, their forms and decorations imbued with symbolic meaning. As the sun set over the ancient Egyptian landscape, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple, a different kind of life began under the dreamy desert nights. Evening activities often involved quiet family gatherings, storytelling, and simple meals shared by flickering oil lamps. Stargazing was not just a pastime but a profound spiritual and practical pursuit, with priests and astronomers meticulously charting the movements of stars and constellations, using them for calendrical purposes and understanding the divine order. Evening meals were typically lighter than the midday repast, often consisting of bread, vegetables, and perhaps some fish, enjoyed in the relative coolness of the night air. The nighttime experience varied significantly with the seasons. Cool, crisp winter nights invited cloaks and indoor fires, while balmy summer evenings encouraged sleeping on rooftops or in open courtyards to catch any breeze. The desert climate, with its dramatic temperature shifts between day and night, fostered a deep appreciation for the subtle changes and the adaptive measures taken by both humans and wildlife. The art of hieroglyphic writing, a system of sacred carvings that combined pictorial and phonetic elements, was a profound and beautiful expression of ancient Egyptian thought, its intricate symbols whispering stories across millennia. The preparation of papyrus, the ancient world's primary writing material, was a meticulous process. Thin strips from the papyrus plant were laid out, pressed, and dried to create smooth, durable sheets, ready to receive the scribe's careful hand. Scribe training was a rigorous and lengthy endeavor, often beginning in childhood, where students learned not only to master the complex script, but also mathematics, history, and literature, elevating scribes to a position of immense respect and influence. Ink was made from natural pigments, black from soot and red from ochre, carefully ground and mixed with a binder, while tools included reed pens and small palettes. These skilled individuals meticulously copied and composed countless important ancient texts, from religious treatises and literary works to administrative documents and historical records, preserving the knowledge and beliefs of their civilization. Ancient Egyptian temple architecture and design were monumental expressions of cosmic order, built with enduring stone and aligned with celestial events, creating sacred spaces intended to connect the human and divine realms. Daily temple rituals were precise and symbolic, performed by priests and priestesses who conducted offerings, prayers, and purification ceremonies to honor the gods and maintain cosmic balance. Temple complexes often included serene gardens and sacred pools, providing a tranquil environment for reflection and ritual purity, often symbolizing the primeval watery abyss from which creation arose. Priests and priestesses held significant duties, ranging from overseeing daily rites and managing temple estates to interpreting dreams and providing spiritual guidance, their lives devoted to serving the deities. Temple music and ceremonies were integral to these sacred spaces, with hymns sung, instruments played, and incense burned, creating an immersive sensory experience designed to elevate the spirit and invoke divine presence. Ancient Egyptian art techniques were characterized by their meticulous precision and symbolic depth, with artists working within established conventions to create enduring images. The preparation of pigments was a painstaking process, with minerals like malachite for green, lapis lazuli for blue, and ochre for reds and yellows, carefully ground into fine powders and mixed with a binder, often a plant gum or egg white. Wall painting methods involved applying these vibrant pigments to dry plaster, often in a fresco secco technique, with outlines drawn first and then colors filled in, creating scenes that adorned tombs, temples, and palaces. Color symbolism was deeply ingrained in Egyptian thought. Green represented fertility and new life, blue symbolized the heavens and the Nile, and red evoked power and vitality, each hue conveying specific meanings. The remarkable preservation of these ancient artworks, often due to the dry desert climate and the stability of the pigments, allows us to witness the enduring beauty and narrative power of their colorful creations. The creation of perfumes in ancient Egypt was a sophisticated art, involving the careful extraction of aromatic oils from plants through maceration or enfleurage, then blending them to create exquisite scents. Common Egyptian scents included the sweet fragrance of lotus, the rich aroma of frankincense and myrrh, and the delicate notes of lily and rose, used for personal adornment and religious rituals. Incense preparation was also a vital craft, with resins, dried herbs, and spices ground and mixed to create aromatic compounds that were burned in temples and homes, believed to carry prayers to the gods. Aromatic gardens, cultivated within palace and temple grounds, provided a steady supply of fragrant botanicals, their sweet perfumes wafting through the air. These precious scents played a crucial role in religious ceremonies, used in purification rituals, embalming processes, and as offerings to the deities, enveloping sacred spaces in a fragrant embrace. The construction of riverboats in ancient Egypt was a testament to their ingenuity, ranging from simple papyrus skiffs for local travel to large wooden vessels with sails and oars for long-distance trade, designed to navigate the Nile's currents and winds. Trading routes primarily followed the Nile itself, forming the central artery of commerce, allowing goods to flow efficiently between Upper and Lower Egypt, and connecting them to Nubia to the south and the Mediterranean world to the north. Market life along the riverbanks was vibrant and bustling, with goods exchanged through a system of bartering, as coinage was not yet in widespread use, creating a dynamic social and economic hub. Imported goods brought diversity to Egyptian life, including timber from Lebanon, copper from Sinai, and exotic spices and resins from Punt, enriching the culture and economy. The life of a merchant, though sometimes arduous, offered opportunities for wealth and prestige, as they facilitated the movement of essential and luxury items across the vast empire. Ancient Egyptian musical instruments were diverse and often beautifully crafted, including harps of various sizes, lutes, lyres, flutes, clarinets, and percussion instruments like drums and sistra, each producing distinct sounds that filled the air. Common songs and melodies often accompanied daily tasks, religious ceremonies and celebrations, their rhythms reflecting the pulse of life along the Nile, sometimes evoking themes of love, harvest, or devotion. Dance movements were graceful and expressive, often performed in groups, with dancers using their arms and bodies to tell stories or mimic the movements of nature, sometimes accompanied by acrobatic feats. Musical training was rigorous, particularly for professional musicians and temple performers, with skills passed down through generations, ensuring the continuity of musical traditions. Music played a vital role in celebrations and ceremonies, from joyous festivals and banquets to solemn funerary rites, its powerful presence enhancing the emotional and spiritual dimensions of these important events. Crafted, including harps of various sizes, lutes, lyres, flutes, clarinets, and percussion instruments like drums and sistra, each producing distinct sounds that filled the air. Common songs and melodies often accompanied daily tasks, religious ceremonies, and celebrations, their rhythms reflecting the pulse of life along the Nile, sometimes evoking themes of love, harvest, or devotion. Dance movements were graceful and expressive, often performed in groups, with dancers using their arms and bodies to tell stories or mimic the movements of nature, sometimes accompanied by acrobatic feats. Musical training was rigorous, particularly for professional musicians and temple performers, with skills passed down through generations, ensuring the continuity of musical traditions. Music played a vital role in celebrations and ceremonies, from joyous festivals and banquets to solemn funerary rites, its powerful presence enhancing the emotional and spiritual dimensions of these important events. The instruments themselves were often works of art, intricately decorated with carvings, inlays of precious stones and vibrant pigments. Harps, for instance, evolved from simple bow-shaped instruments to elaborate standing harps, sometimes reaching a height of 6 feet, adorned with images of deities or pharaohs. Their strings, made from animal gut or plant fibers, produced a resonant ethereal tone that could fill vast temple halls. The lutes, with their long necks and smaller sound boxes, offered a more intimate sound, often used for solo performances or to accompany singers. Flutes and clarinets, crafted from reed or wood, provided melodic lines that could be both haunting and joyful, their simple construction belying the complex melodies they produced. The sistrum, a rattle-like instrument with a handle and a U-shaped frame holding rattling discs, was particularly sacred, associated with the goddess Hathor and used in temple rituals to ward off evil spirits and invoke divine blessings. Its distinctive metallic jingle was believed to purify the air and attract benevolent forces. Drums, ranging from small hand drums to large ceremonial instruments, provided the rhythmic backbone for most musical ensembles, their deep thrumming echoing the heartbeat of the land. The themes of ancient Egyptian songs were remarkably diverse, reflecting the full spectrum of human experience. Love songs, often found inscribed on ostraca or papyrus fragments, speak of yearning, devotion, and the beauty of nature, frequently comparing the beloved to blooming flowers or fertile fields. Harvest songs celebrated the bounty of the Nile, giving thanks to the gods for successful yields and envisioning a future of prosperity. Hymns to the gods were a cornerstone of religious practice, praising the attributes of deities like Re, Osiris, and Isis, and seeking their favor. These hymns were often elaborate poetic compositions, recited or sung with a solemn reverence that underscored their spiritual significance. Funerary laments, on the other hand, expressed profound grief and sorrow, but also hope for the deceased's successful journey to the afterlife, often incorporating invocations to Osiris, the lord of the underworld. The lyrics, though often fragmented in surviving texts, reveal a sophisticated understanding of emotion and a deep connection to the spiritual realm. Dance, too, was a highly developed art form, far beyond simple movement. Dancers, often skilled professionals, were trained from a young age in specific choreographies and movements. Temple dances were highly ritualized, with specific steps and gestures designed to honor deities or reenact mythological events. For instance, dances dedicated to Hathor often involved movements that mimicked the swaying of papyrus reeds or the gentle flow of the Nile, evoking fertility and life. Funerary dances could be somber and processional, guiding the deceased spirit, or more energetic, intended to ward off malevolent forces. At banquets and celebrations, dancers provided entertainment, often performing acrobatic feats or intricate group choreographies that showcased their agility and coordination. The movements were fluid and graceful, emphasizing the natural lines of the body and often incorporating symbolic hand gestures. Reliefs and paintings frequently depict dancers with elaborate costumes, sometimes adorned with jewelry and floral wreaths, further enhancing the visual spectacle. The interaction between music and dance was seamless, with the rhythm and melody dictating the pace and emotional tone of the movements. The social standing of musicians and dancers varied considerably. While some performers were slaves or servants, many were highly respected professionals, particularly those associated with the temples or the royal court. Temple musicians and singers, often priestesses or priests, held significant religious authority, their performances considered essential for maintaining cosmic order. The Shimayet, female musicians and singers associated with the cult of Hathor, were particularly prominent, serving as priestesses and performers in various temples. Royal musicians and dancers enjoyed patronage from the pharaoh and his court, often living in luxurious conditions and accompanying the monarch on his travels. Their skills were highly valued, and their performances were considered a mark of prestige and refinement. Musical training was often an inherited profession, with families passing down their knowledge and skills through generations, ensuring a continuous lineage of talent. This rigorous apprenticeship began early, involving not only instrumental proficiency, but also an understanding of musical theory, rhythm, and the extensive repertoire of songs and compositions. Music's omnipresence extended to the military, where trumpets and drums were used to coordinate troop movements, signal commands, and instill courage in battle. The loud, piercing sound of war trumpets could also be used to intimidate enemies, creating a sense of awe and fear. In the bustling markets and workshops, street musicians provided a constant backdrop of sound, their melodies adding to the vibrant tapestry of daily life. Even in the quiet solitude of homes, simple songs were sung to lull children to sleep or to pass the time during mundane tasks. The ancient Egyptians understood the profound power of music to evoke emotion, transcend the mundane, and connect with the divine, weaving it into every facet of their existence. The archaeological record, though limited in its ability to reproduce the actual sounds, provides a rich visual and textual testament to this vibrant musical culture. Ancient Egyptian art was not merely decorative, it was fundamentally functional, serving religious, funerary, and commemorative purposes. Its primary aim was to ensure the eternal existence and well-being of the deceased in the afterlife, to glorify the gods, and to immortalize the pharaohs and their achievements. The art followed strict conventions and canons, ensuring consistency and legibility across millennia, a stylistic continuity that is truly remarkable. Figures were typically depicted in a composite view, combining the most characteristic aspects of the human form: the head in profile, the eye frontal, the shoulders frontal, and the hips and legs in profile. This convention allowed for a clear and comprehensive representation of the body, even if it defied naturalistic perspective. Hierarchical scale was another crucial element, where the size of a figure directly correlated with its importance, with pharaohs and deities often depicted much larger than commoners or servants. The materials used in Egyptian art were diverse and often imbued with symbolic meaning. Stone, particularly limestone, sandstone, granite, and basalt, was the preferred medium for monumental sculptures and architecture due to its durability symbolizing eternity. Wood, though less common due to scarcity, was used for smaller statues, sarcophagi, and furniture. Metals like gold, silver, bronze, and copper were reserved for precious objects, jewelry, and divine effigies, their lustrous surfaces reflecting the sun and divine light. Foliants, a glazed ceramic material, was widely used for small amulets, beads, and decorative tiles, its vibrant blue-green color often associated with fertility and rebirth. Pigments for painting were derived from natural minerals, such as red and yellow ochre for earthy tones, malachite for green, azurite for blue, and carbon black for outlines and details. These colors were often mixed with a binder, like gum arabic or egg white, to create durable and vibrant paints that have retained their intensity for thousands of years. Wall paintings and reliefs adorned the interiors of tombs, temples, and palaces, serving as visual narratives that conveyed religious beliefs, historical events, and daily life. In tombs, these scenes depicted the deceased enjoying the pleasures of the afterlife, scenes of offerings to the gods, and vignettes of agricultural activities, hunting and fishing, all intended to magically provide for the needs of the Cain and Bay in the spiritual realm. The scenes were often arranged in registers, read from top to bottom or left to right, much like a comic strip, guiding the viewer through a narrative sequence. The clarity of the lines, the flat planes of color, and the absence of shadows created a timeless, idealized vision of reality, free from the imperfections of the mundane world. The artists, often anonymous craftsmen, worked within established workshops, meticulously adhering to the prescribed artistic canons. Sculpture in ancient Egypt encompassed a wide range of forms, from colossal statues of pharaohs and deities to intimate funerary figures. Royal statues, often carved from hard, durable stone, portrayed the pharaoh in an idealized, eternal state, embodying divine power and unwavering authority. These sculptures were not meant to be realistic portraits but rather symbolic representations of kingship, emphasizing strength, serenity, and timelessness. Funerary statues placed within tombs served as alternative dwelling places for the ka, the life force of the deceased, should the mummified body be damaged. These statues, known as ka statues, were often carved with meticulous detail, capturing the individual features of the deceased, though still adhering to the idealized conventions of the time. Small statuettes of deities, animals, and mythological creatures were also common, serving as amulets, cult objects, or votive offerings. The craftsmanship involved in carving these works, particularly from hard stones like granite, was extraordinary, requiring immense skill and patience. Architecture in ancient Egypt was primarily monumental, designed to express the power of the pharaohs, the majesty of the gods, and the enduring nature of their civilization. Temples were not merely places of worship, but complex cosmic machines, aligned with astronomical events, and designed to facilitate communication between the human and divine realms. The most iconic architectural forms include the pyramids, mastabas, and rock-cut tombs, all serving as elaborate burial structures for the elite. The pyramids, particularly those at Giza, are a testament to the organizational prowess, engineering skill, and vast resources of the Old Kingdom pharaohs. Their precise alignment with the cardinal directions and their immense scale speak to a profound understanding of mathematics and astronomy. Temples evolved over time, from simpler cult chapels to vast, sprawling complexes like Karnak and Luxor. These temples typically featured a pylon massive gateway, an open courtyard, a hypostyle hall, a hall with many columns, and a sanctuary, the most sacred part where the cult image of the god resided. The walls of these temples were covered with intricate reliefs and hieroglyphs, depicting offerings to the gods, battle scenes, and rituals, all designed to maintain cosmic order, and secure divine favor. Columns, often inspired by plant forms like papyrus and lotus, supported the massive roofs, creating a forest-like atmosphere within the hypostyle halls, further enhancing the sense of awe and mystery. The use of clerestory lighting, allowing light to filter down from above, created dramatic effects, illuminating specific areas and emphasizing the sacredness of the space. Funerary architecture, beyond the pyramids, included mastabas, rectangular flat-topped structures with sloping sides, which served as tombs for early pharaohs and nobles. Later, during the New Kingdom, rock-cut tombs became prevalent, particularly in the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. These tombs were carved directly into the cliffs, often featuring elaborate corridors, chambers, and burial shafts. Their walls richly decorated with scenes from the Book of the Dead and other funerary texts, guiding the deceased through the underworld. The concealment of these tombs was a deliberate attempt to protect them from tomb robbers, a constant threat throughout Egyptian history. The construction techniques employed by the ancient Egyptians were remarkably sophisticated, relying on simple tools and an immense amount of human labor. Stone blocks were quarried using copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, and wooden wedges. Once extracted, they were transported, often over long distances, using sledges, ropes, and ramps, sometimes aided by water to reduce friction. The precise cutting and fitting of these massive blocks, often weighing many tons, without the use of mortar, remains a marvel of engineering. The construction of the pyramids, for example, involved moving millions of such blocks with astonishing accuracy. The sheer scale of these projects required meticulous planning, a highly organized labor force, and a deep understanding of geometry and physics. The use of skilled craftsmen, foremen, and engineers was crucial to the successful execution of these monumental undertakings. The symbolism embedded within Egyptian art and architecture was profound and pervasive. The lotus and papyrus motifs symbolized the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, while the Ankh, the symbol of life, appeared ubiquitously. Scarab beetles represented rebirth and regeneration, and the various deities were depicted with specific attributes that identified their powers and roles. Colors also carried symbolic weight: blue and green for fertility and rebirth, red for power and protection, yellow for the sun and eternity, and black for the underworld and regeneration. The orientation of temples and tombs was often astronomically aligned, connecting earthly structures to the celestial realm and reinforcing the belief in an ordered cosmos. Every element, from the smallest amulet to the grandest temple, was carefully conceived to contribute to a coherent worldview, one that emphasized stability, eternity, and the divine order. The enduring legacy of this art and architecture continues to captivate and inspire, offering a window into the rich spiritual and cultural life of ancient Egypt. The Nile River was not merely a geographical feature, it was the pulsating heart of ancient Egyptian civilization, shaping every aspect of their existence from agriculture and economy to religion and worldview. Without its annual inundation, the fertile ribbon of land that supported millions would have been an unforgiving desert, rendering Egypt uninhabitable. This mighty river, flowing over 6,650 kilometers from its sources deep in Central Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, provided the essential elements for life: water for drinking and irrigation, fertile soil for crops, and a vital transportation artery. The annual flood of the Nile was the most crucial event in the Egyptian calendar, a phenomenon that occurred with remarkable regularity between July and October. This natural miracle was caused by torrential rains in the Ethiopian highlands and melting snows in the mountains of East Africa, sending a surge of nutrient-rich silt downstream. As the floodwaters receded, they left behind a thick layer of black, fertile mud, known as kimet, which was ideal for cultivation. This annual renewal of the soil meant that Egyptian farmers did not need to practice crop rotation or use artificial fertilizers. The Nile provided all the necessary nutrients. The predictability of the flood allowed the Egyptians to develop a sophisticated calendar based on 3 seasons: Akhet inundation period growing season and Shemu harvest season. This deep understanding of the river's rhythm fostered a sense of order and stability in their society. The agricultural bounty produced by the Nile's fertile banks was astounding. Wheat and barley were the staple crops, providing the basis for bread and beer, the 2 fundamental components of the Egyptian diet. Flax was grown to produce linen, used for clothing, sails, and burial shrouds. Papyrus, a tall reed growing along the riverbanks, was perhaps one of the most versatile plants, providing material for writing scrolls, boats, sandals, baskets, and even food. Vegetables like onions, garlic, lettuce, and lentils, along with various fruits such as figs, dates, and grapes, supplemented their diet. This agricultural surplus not only fed the population, but also allowed for specialization of labor, supporting a complex society of artisans, scribes, priests, and administrators. Beyond agriculture, the Nile served as the primary highway of ancient Egypt. Its northward flow, combined with prevailing northerly winds, allowed for efficient travel in both directions. Boats could sail southward against the current by raising their sails to catch the wind, and drift northward with the current, making transportation of goods, people, and building materials incredibly efficient. This ease of movement facilitated trade and communication between different regions of Egypt, fostering a sense of national unity and centralizing political power. Colossal stone blocks for pyramids and temples were transported on massive barges, a feat that would have been impossible without the river. The Nile effectively connected the entire civilization, acting as a unifying force. The river was teeming with life, providing an abundant source of food. Fish, such as tilapia and catfish, were a staple protein, caught using nets, spears, and hooks. Waterfowl like ducks and geese were hunted in the marshes along the banks. The papyrus thickets and reed beds provided shelter for a diverse ecosystem including crocodiles and hippopotamuses, which, while sometimes dangerous, were also revered and incorporated into religious beliefs. The Nile's rich biodiversity was an integral part of the Egyptian natural world, influencing their art, mythology, and daily practices. The Nile's profound influence extended deeply into Egyptian religious beliefs. The river was personified as the god Hapi, often depicted as a pot-bellied man with pendulous breasts, symbolizing the fertility and abundance he brought. The annual flood was seen as a divine gift, a manifestation of the god's benevolence. The concept of Ma'at, cosmic order and justice, was intricately linked to the predictable cycles of the Nile. Its reliable inundation reinforced the belief in a stable, divinely ordered universe, where chaos was kept at bay. The river was also seen as a pathway to the afterlife, with the deceased often depicted sailing upon its waters in funerary texts. The rising of the sun from the eastern bank and its setting in the west mirrored the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, further intertwining the river with their understanding of eternity. Even the landscape itself was shaped by the Nile. The fertile black land, Kemet, contrasted sharply with the red desert Deshret on either side, creating a stark duality that permeated Egyptian thought. The desert was associated with chaos, danger, and the realm of the dead, while the black land represented life, order, and fertility. This geographical contrast reinforced their worldview and was reflected in their art and literature. The Nile was not just a river, it was a living deity, a provider, a highway, and a cosmic force that defined the very essence of ancient Egyptian civilization. Its enduring presence was the bedrock upon which one of history's most remarkable cultures flourished for millennia. To the afterlife, with the deceased often depicted sailing upon its waters in funerary texts. The rising of the sun from the eastern bank and its setting in the west mirrored the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, further intertwining the river with their understanding of eternity. Even the landscape itself was shaped by the Nile. The fertile black land Kemet contrasted sharply with the red desert Deshret on either side, creating a stark duality that permeated Egyptian thought. The desert was associated with chaos, danger, and the realm of the dead, while the black land represented life, order, and fertility. This geographical contrast reinforced their worldview and was reflected in their art and literature. The Nile was not just a river, it was a living deity, a provider, a highway, and a cosmic force that defined the very essence of ancient Egyptian civilization. Its enduring presence was the bedrock upon which one of history's most remarkable cultures flourished for millennia. The annual inundation, a phenomenon that mystified and awed the ancient Egyptians, was the lifeblood of their agricultural society. Every year around July, the Nile would begin to swell, fed by the monsoon rains in the Ethiopian highlands and the melting snows of Central Africa. This wasn't merely a flood, it was a carefully orchestrated natural event, predicted by generations of observation and deeply integrated into their religious calendar. The water would rise steadily, submerging the fields along its banks for several weeks, depositing a rich layer of black, fertile silt. This silt, a natural fertilizer, replenished the soil's nutrients, making it incredibly productive without the need for extensive artificial fertilization. The predictability of this event, year after year, allowed for a stable agricultural surplus, which in turn supported a large, specialized population and the monumental building projects that define their legacy. Without the inundation, the vast expanse of Egypt would have been an unforgiving desert, incapable of sustaining such a complex civilization. Understanding and managing the inundation became a cornerstone of Egyptian governance and scientific endeavor. Nilometers, stone pillars with marked scales, were constructed at various points along the river to measure the height of the floodwaters. These measurements were crucial for predicting the success of the harvest and for calculating taxes, which were often based on the expected yield. A flood that was too low meant drought and famine, while one that was too high could cause widespread destruction of villages and crops. The pharaoh was seen as the intermediary between the gods and the people, responsible for ensuring the Nile's beneficence. Rituals and prayers were offered to Hapi, the god of the Nile inundation, to ensure a bountiful flood. This intimate relationship with the river fostered a sophisticated understanding of hydrology and engineering, leading to the development of elaborate irrigation systems. Canals were dug to channel the floodwaters further inland, expanding the arable land, and basins were created to retain water for longer periods, allowing for the cultivation of crops even after the main flood receded. These engineering feats, though seemingly simple, represented an advanced level of communal organization and technical knowledge for their time. The Nile also served as the primary highway for transportation and communication, effectively unifying a long, narrow kingdom. Without the Nile, the logistical challenges of governing a territory stretching over 1,000 kilometers would have been insurmountable. Boats, from small papyrus skiffs to large wooden cargo vessels, traversed its waters constantly, carrying goods, people, and messages. Limestone from Tura, granite from Aswan, alabaster from Hatnob, and timber from the Levant all moved along the river, destined for temples, tombs, and palaces. This efficient transport system facilitated trade, not only within Egypt but also with neighboring lands, contributing to Egypt's economic prosperity. The ease of movement allowed for the rapid deployment of troops, the efficient collection of taxes, and the swift dissemination of royal decrees, all vital for maintaining central authority. The Nile was the circulatory system of the Egyptian state, pulsating with life and connecting every part of the kingdom. Beyond its practical applications, the Nile held profound symbolic meaning, deeply woven into the fabric of Egyptian cosmology and religious belief. It was often identified with the primordial waters of Nun, from which all creation emerged. The river itself was a manifestation of divine order, a constant and predictable force in a world that could often seem chaotic. The journey of the sun god Re across the sky, from east to west, mirrored the journey of the Nile from its mysterious source to the Mediterranean Sea, and also the daily cycle of life and death. The West Bank, where the sun set, became the realm of the dead, the necropolis, while the East Bank, where the sun rose, was the land of the living. This geographical division, dictated by the river, reinforced the cyclical nature of existence and the Egyptians' belief in an afterlife. The deceased were ferried across the Nile to their eternal resting places, embarking on a symbolic journey to rejoin the cosmic order. Consider the role of the Nile in the construction of the pyramids and other monumental structures. The sheer volume of stone required for these projects would have been impossible to transport over land using only human and animal power. Instead, the Nile provided the perfect means. Massive barges, some capable of carrying hundreds of tons, were constructed to float quarried blocks downriver from sites like Aswan for granite or Tura for limestone. These blocks, often weighing many tons each, were then carefully unloaded at construction sites near the riverbanks. The annual inundation provided an additional advantage. When the floodwaters were at their highest, they could be channeled into temporary canals, bringing the heavy stones even closer to the construction sites, significantly reducing the distance they had to be dragged overland. This ingenious use of natural forces demonstrates a remarkable understanding of civil engineering and logistics, all predicated on the presence and predictability of the Nile. Without this watery highway, the iconic structures that define ancient Egypt might never have been built, or at least not on the scale we see today. The Nile also influenced the development of Egyptian art and literature. The flora and fauna of the Nile Valley, papyrus, lotus flowers, crocodiles, hippopotami, and various fish and birds are ubiquitous motifs in their artistic representations. From tomb paintings depicting scenes of daily life along the river, to elaborate temple carvings celebrating the bounty of the inundation, the Nile was a constant source of inspiration. The lotus, which emerged from the muddy waters to bloom beautifully, became a powerful symbol of creation, rebirth, and the sun. Papyrus, growing abundantly along the riverbanks, was not only used for writing material, but also for boats, mats, and baskets, becoming an emblem of Lower Egypt. The stories and myths of ancient Egypt often feature the Nile prominently, from the myth of Osiris, whose body was scattered along its banks, to tales of gods and pharaohs navigating its waters. The river was not merely a backdrop, it was an active participant in their narratives, shaping destinies and reflecting the divine order. The very concept of time for the ancient Egyptians was intrinsically linked to the Nile. Their calendar was divided into 3 seasons, each directly related to the river's cycle: Akhet, inundation; Piret, growing; and Shemu, harvest. Akhet, the season of the flood, lasted from roughly July to November, when the fields were submerged and fertilized. This was a period of intense communal labor, as people worked to manage the floodwaters, build and repair irrigation systems, and prepare for planting. Piret, the growing season from November to March, saw the planting of crops in the newly fertilized soil. Finally, Shemu, the harvest season from March to July, was a time of reaping the bounty of the land before the next inundation began. This agricultural calendar, dictated by the Nile, structured their entire lives, from religious festivals to administrative duties. It was a calendar born of practicality and observation, a testament to their deep connection with their environment. The dependence on the Nile also fostered a unique social and political structure. The need for coordinated effort in managing the irrigation systems and distributing the fertile land led to the development of strong central authority. Large-scale irrigation projects required planning, labor, and oversight that could only be provided by a centralized government. The pharaoh, at the apex of this structure, was not just a king but a divine ruler, responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic order, which included ensuring the Nile's annual bounty. The priests, who understood the celestial cycles and the river's patterns, played a crucial role in advising the pharaoh and interpreting the divine will. The scribes, who recorded the flood levels and crop yields, were essential for administration and taxation. This intricate web of roles and responsibilities, all ultimately tied to the Nile, contributed to a highly organized and remarkably stable society that endured for thousands of years. Even the everyday diet of the ancient Egyptians was a direct product of the Nile. The fertile soil, irrigated by the river, allowed for the cultivation of staple crops like emmer wheat and barley, which formed the basis of their bread and beer, their primary dietary components. Vegetables such as onions, garlic, leeks, lettuce, and beans thrived in the rich soil. Fish, abundant in the Nile, provided a vital source of protein, while waterfowl, attracted to the river's ecosystem, were hunted. The river also supported the papyrus plant, used for food in some forms, and provided reeds for construction. This self-sufficiency in food production, directly attributable to the Nile's gifts, allowed the population to grow and flourish, freeing up a significant portion of the workforce for other endeavors, such as craft production, monumental construction, and military service. The river was, quite literally, feeding their civilization. The Nile was more than just a geographical feature, it was a psychological anchor, a source of stability and continuity in a world that could often be unpredictable. The annual return of the flood, the rebirth of the land, and the cyclical journey of the sun across the heavens instilled in the Egyptians a profound sense of optimism and belief in eternal renewal. This worldview is evident in their elaborate funerary practices, their emphasis on the afterlife, and their enduring monuments, all designed to defy mortality and connect with the cosmic order. The very concept of eternity for the Egyptians was tied to the unchanging yet ever-renewing cycle of the Nile. It was a benevolent force, a constant reminder of the gods' favor, and the foundation of their enduring civilization. The Nile's influence permeated every aspect of their existence, shaping their beliefs, their economy, their art, and their very understanding of life and death, making it truly the gift of the Nile, a phrase coined by the Greek historian Herodotus, which accurately encapsulates its paramount importance. The spiritual connection to the Nile manifested in numerous festivals and rituals throughout the year. One of the most significant was the Festival of Opi, celebrated annually in Thebes. During this elaborate procession, the cult images of Amun, Mut, and Khonsu were transported by barge along the Nile from the Karnak temple to the Luxor temple, symbolizing a sacred journey and a renewal of divine power. This public display of piety and the gods' interaction with the river reinforced the Nile's sacred status and its role in maintaining divine favor. Another important ritual was the cutting of the dike, which marked the beginning of the inundation season. Although the exact details varied over time, this ceremony often involved the pharaoh or a high priest symbolically breaking a dike to allow the floodwaters to enter the irrigation canals, a ritual act that mirrored the pharaoh's role as the guarantor of the Nile's beneficence. These festivals were not mere celebrations, they were vital acts of communion with the divine, ensuring the continued prosperity and stability of the kingdom, all centered around the life-giving waters of the Nile. Even the ancient Egyptian concept of justice and order, Masat, was subtly influenced by the predictable flow of the Nile. Just as the river followed its determined course, bringing order and life to the land, so too was society expected to adhere to principles of balance, truth, and harmony. Disruptions to the Nile's cycle, whether too little water or too much, was seen as a disturbance of Masat, potentially signaling divine displeasure. This created a profound sense of responsibility for the pharaoh to maintain cosmic order, ensuring the gods' continued favor and the Nile's bounty. The river, therefore, served as a tangible manifestation of man on earth, a constant reminder of the natural laws that governed existence and the importance of adhering to them for the well-being of the entire society. The agricultural innovations spurred by the Nile were quite advanced for their time. Beyond simple irrigation canals, the Egyptians developed sophisticated shaduffs, a counterbalanced lever system for lifting water from the Nile or canals to higher fields, allowing for irrigation of land that was not directly reached by the flood. They also utilized water wheels, and in later periods the Archimedes screw, though the latter was introduced much later in their history. The careful observation of the stars, particularly Sirius Sopdid, whose heliacal rising coincided with the beginning of the Nile's inundation, enabled them to predict the flood's arrival with remarkable accuracy. This astronomical knowledge was not just for practical agricultural planning, it was also deeply integrated into their religious beliefs, as Sopdet was often associated with Isis, the goddess of fertility and motherhood, further cementing the divine connection between the heavens, the Nile, and the fertility of the land. The enduring legacy of the Nile's influence is still visible in modern Egypt. While the construction of the Aswan High Dam in the 20th century significantly altered the natural flood cycle, it also brought stability and control over water resources, allowing for year-round cultivation and hydroelectric power generation. However, this modern intervention also severed the direct, ancient connection between the people and the natural rhythms of the river, ending the annual inundation that had shaped Egyptian civilization for millennia. Despite these changes, the Nile remains the lifeblood of Egypt, its banks still teeming with life, its waters still sustaining a vibrant population. The ancient wisdom of harnessing its power, the reverence for its life-giving properties, and the profound cultural impact it had continue to resonate in the landscape and the collective memory of the Egyptian people. The story of ancient Egypt is, in essence, the story of its relationship with the Nile, a testament to how a single geographical feature can shape the destiny and identity of an entire civilization. The Nile also served as a natural defensive barrier for ancient Egypt. To the east and west lay vast, inhospitable deserts, making large-scale invasions difficult. To the south, the cataracts, stretches of rapids and shallow water, provided a natural impediment to upstream navigation, effectively protecting the southern border. While these natural defenses were not impenetrable, they significantly reduced the number of potential invasion routes and allowed the Egyptians to focus their military efforts on fewer fronts, primarily in the Levant to the northeast. This geographical isolation, largely provided by the Nile and its surrounding deserts, contributed to the remarkable stability and longevity of ancient Egyptian civilization, allowing its unique culture and institutions to develop and flourish relatively undisturbed for long periods. The river was not only a source of life, but also a silent guardian, protecting the civilization it nurtured. The very concept of a unified Egypt, a two lands of Upper and Lower Egypt, was inherently tied to the Nile. Upper Egypt, stretching from the first cataract northwards to just south of modern Cairo, was characterized by its narrow valley, flanked by high cliffs. Lower Egypt, the Delta region, was a broad, fertile fan of land where the Nile branched into numerous distributaries before meeting the Mediterranean Sea. The unification of these two distinct geographical and cultural regions under a single pharaoh, traditionally attributed to Narmer or Menes around 3100 BCE, was a monumental achievement made possible by the unifying artery of the Nile. The river served as the central axis around which the kingdom was organized, facilitating administrative control and cultural exchange between the north and south. The symbolism of the pharaoh wearing the double crown, combining the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, was a constant reminder of this unification, a political reality made possible by the Nile's continuous flow. The Nile's influence extended even to the technology of shipbuilding. The availability of papyrus along its banks led to the early development of reed boats, which were lightweight and suitable for navigating the shallow waters and marshes of the delta. As the need for larger and more durable vessels grew, particularly for transporting heavy stone blocks and for trade, the Egyptians began constructing wooden boats. However, Egypt itself was relatively poor in large timber suitable for shipbuilding. This necessitated trade with regions like Phoenicia, modern Lebanon, for cedarwood. Despite the scarcity of local timber, Egyptian shipbuilders developed sophisticated techniques for constructing sturdy vessels, often using short planks joined together with mortise and tenon joints, and then lashed with ropes. These boats, propelled by sails and oars, were perfectly adapted to the Nile's currents, allowing them to travel upstream against the current with sails, and downstream with the current by drifting or with minimal effort. This mastery of riverine navigation was a critical factor in their economic prosperity and political unity. The unique ecology of the Nile also shaped the Egyptian worldview. The constant presence of crocodiles and hippopotami, dangerous yet integral parts of the river ecosystem, led to their incorporation into religious beliefs. Sobek, the crocodile god, was revered and sometimes feared, representing both the ferocity and the fertility of the Nile. Hippopotami, though destructive to crops, were also associated with fertility and rebirth, sometimes depicted as benevolent deities. The diverse bird life from wading birds to raptors found their way into hieroglyphic symbols and artistic representations, each carrying specific meanings. The annual migration of birds along the Nile flyway also contributed to their understanding of cyclical patterns and the interconnectedness of nature. This rich biodiversity fostered by the river provided a constant source of inspiration and symbolism, enriching their complex religious and cultural tapestry. The very landscape of ancient Egypt, a narrow ribbon of green surrounded by vast, barren deserts, instilled a deep appreciation for the concept of contrast and duality. The fertile black land, Kemet, and the desolate red land, Deshret, were not just geographical distinctions, but fundamental philosophical concepts. The black land represented life, order, and civilization, sustained by the Nile's bounty. The red land symbolized death, chaos, and the untamed wilderness. This duality was reflected in their gods, their art, and their understanding of the cosmos. Osiris, the god of the fertile land and the afterlife, contrasted with Set, the god of chaos and the desert. This constant interplay between opposing forces, yet held in balance by Mat, was a core tenet of Egyptian thought, and its most vivid manifestation was the stark boundary between the life-giving Nile Valley and the encroaching desert. The Nile was the definitive line, the boundary that separated existence from non-existence, order from chaos, making its presence not merely practical but profoundly existential. The Nile was not merely a river, it was a living deity, a benevolent force whose annual inundation dictated the rhythm of life itself. Every summer, the river would swell, fed by monsoon rains in the Ethiopian highlands, carrying with it rich, black silt that revitalized the agricultural lands. This predictable cycle of flood and recession was so central to Egyptian existence that their calendar was structured around it, with 3 seasons: Aked, the inundation; Piret, the growing season; and Shemu, the harvest. The very prosperity of the civilization hinged on the Nile's consistent behavior. Without the annual flood, there would be no crops, no food, and ultimately no Egypt. This absolute dependence fostered a deep reverence for the river, evident in hymns and prayers dedicated to Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood. They understood, perhaps more acutely than any other ancient people, that their very survival was a gift from this life-giving artery. The intricate network of irrigation canals they developed to harness and distribute the Nile's waters stands as a testament to their engineering prowess and their profound understanding of their unique environment. These canals weren't just ditches, they were lifelines meticulously planned and maintained, ensuring that every available drop of the precious water reached the thirsty fields. Beyond its practical implications, the Nile exerted a profound influence on Egyptian cosmology and their understanding of the afterlife. The journey of the sun god Ra across the sky from east to west mirrored the journey of the Nile from its southern sources to its northern delta. This daily cycle of birth, death, and rebirth was a powerful metaphor for the human experience and the promise of the afterlife. Just as the sun set in the west only to rise again in the east, so too would the deceased, after their journey through the underworld, hope to be reborn into an eternal existence. The west bank of the Nile became synonymous with death and the afterlife, the site of vast necropolises like the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, while the east bank hummed with the vibrant activity of the living. This geographical distinction was not arbitrary. It was imbued with deep symbolic meaning, reinforcing the duality of life and death, day and night. The desert, Deseret, was the antithesis of the Nile's embrace, yet it was equally integral to the Egyptian worldview. While it represented danger, chaos, and the realm of Set, it also offered protection. The vast, inhospitable stretches of sand acted as a natural barrier against invaders, allowing Egyptian civilization to flourish in relative isolation for millennia. This geological isolation fostered a unique cultural identity, allowing their traditions, beliefs, and artistic styles to evolve without significant external influence for extended periods. The desert also provided vital resources: quarries for stone, mines for precious metals like gold and copper, and sources for rare minerals were all located in the desolate landscapes beyond the fertile strip. Expeditions into the desert, though perilous, were crucial for acquiring the materials needed to build their monumental temples, craft their exquisite jewelry, and even to create the pigments for their vibrant art. Thus, the desert, while feared, was also a source of wealth and a silent guardian. The interplay between these two dominant geographical features, the Black Land and the Red Land, permeated every aspect of Egyptian life, from their agricultural practices to their religious beliefs and their artistic expressions. Their art, for instance, often depicted scenes of abundance and order within the Nile Valley, contrasting sharply with the chaotic and dangerous imagery associated with the desert. Animals like crocodiles and hippopotami, denizens of the Nile, were often revered or feared, while desert creatures like snakes and scorpions were often associated with malevolent forces. Even the architecture reflected this duality. The grand, enduring stone temples and tombs were built to last for eternity, echoing the stability of the Nile's cycle, while temporary structures for the living were often made of mud brick, reflective of the transient nature of mortal life. This profound understanding of their environment fostered a unique sense of balance and harmony, known as Mernat. Mert was more than just justice or truth. It was the cosmic order, the fundamental principle that governed the universe, ensuring that everything remained in its proper place and functioned as it should. The annual flooding of the Nile, the rising and setting of the sun, the predictability of the seasons, all were manifestations of Mert. Any disruption to these natural cycles, such as a famine caused by a low Nile flood, was seen as a threat to Mert, a sign that chaos was encroaching. The pharaoh, as the living embodiment of Horus and the intermediary between gods and men, was responsible for upholding Mert. His rituals, his decrees, and his very presence were believed to maintain the delicate balance that kept the world from descending into primordial chaos. The very act of building temples and offering sacrifices was a way to reinforce Martzat, to ensure the continued benevolence of the gods and the stability of the natural world. The concept of duality extended even to their political structure. Upper Egypt, the long, narrow strip of fertile land stretching south from modern-day Cairo, and Lower Egypt, the broad, fan-shaped delta region, were distinct entities with their own traditions, deities, and even their own crowns. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single pharaoh was a monumental achievement, symbolically represented by the double crown, combining the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt. This unification was not merely a political act, it was seen as a cosmic rebalancing, bringing together the two halves of the world into a harmonious whole. Even after unification, the distinct identities of Upper and Lower Egypt remained, manifesting in administrative divisions, religious cults, and even variations in dialect. The pharaoh, in his titulary, often referred to himself as King of Upper and Lower Egypt, constantly reinforcing this fundamental duality within the unified state. This pervasive concept of duality also influenced their understanding of the human condition. Life and death were not seen as absolute opposites, but as two phases of a continuous cycle. The elaborate funerary rituals, the meticulous mummification process, and the rich grave goods were all designed to ensure a successful transition from earthly existence to the eternal afterlife. The deceased was not simply dead, they were undergoing a transformation, a journey through the Duat, the underworld, to emerge reborn in the Field of Reeds, a paradise mirroring the fertile Nile Valley. This belief in an ordered afterlife where the deceased would continue to live in a state of bliss provided comfort and meaning in the face of mortality. The pyramids, those monumental tombs that still dominate the landscape, were not merely burial places. They were intricate machines designed to facilitate this transition, cosmic stairways leading the pharaoh to his divine destiny among the stars. The very act of building such enduring structures reflected a belief in eternity, a defiance of the fleeting nature of human life. The contrast between the life-giving Nile and the death-dealing desert also shaped their sense of time. The cyclical nature of the Nile's flood and the sun's journey across the sky instilled a profound appreciation for repetition and renewal. Their calendar, based on the Nile's cycle, was a testament to this. Unlike many modern societies that view time as linear and progressive, the ancient Egyptians perceived time as cyclical, an endless repetition of creation and renewal. This cyclical view of time was reflected in their myths, where gods were born, died, and were reborn, and in their rituals which sought to perpetually reenact the primordial acts of creation. This perspective fostered a sense of stability and reassurance. Even if things changed, they would ultimately return to their proper order, guided by the immutable principles of Ma'at. The unique geographical setting of ancient Egypt, therefore, was not merely a backdrop for their civilization. It was the very crucible in which their worldview was forged. The constant interplay between the fertile black land and the desolate red land, the predictable rhythm of the Nile and the ever-present threat of the desert shaped their religious beliefs, their political structures, their art, and their understanding of life and death. It was a civilization built on a profound appreciation for contrast, balance, and the enduring power of cosmic order, a testament to humanity's ability to not just survive, but to thrive and create meaning in the most challenging of environments. The lessons learned from the Nile's embrace and the desert's edge resonated through every aspect of their sophisticated culture, leaving an indelible mark on history that continues to fascinate and inspire. The very ingenuity of their agricultural practices, from the shaduf for lifting water to the intricate canal systems, demonstrates a deep and practical understanding of their environment, transforming a potentially harsh landscape into a fertile breadbasket. The annual inundation was not just a natural phenomenon, it was an event imbued with spiritual significance, a yearly rebirth of the land. The receding waters left behind a layer of nutrient-rich black silt, renewing the soil's fertility without the need for artificial fertilizers. This natural replenishment allowed for continuous cultivation, year after year, sustaining a large population in a relatively confined area. The abundance provided by the Nile meant that not everyone had to engage in agricultural labor, freeing a significant portion of the population to specialize in other crafts, administration, and religious pursuits. This specialization was a crucial factor in the development of a complex social structure, with priests, scribes, artisans, and soldiers all contributing to the functioning of the state. The Nile, in essence, was the engine of their civilization, driving its economic, social, and cultural development. The desert, while seemingly barren, held its own mysteries and resources. It was the source of the fine silicified sandstone and granite used for monumental architecture, the basalt for statues, and the alabaster for exquisite vessels. Expeditions into the desert, though fraught with danger from dehydration, sandstorms, and hostile nomadic tribes, were essential for acquiring these vital materials. These expeditions also reveal a different facet of the Egyptian character: their resilience, their organizational skills, and their willingness to face adversity for the sake of their grand projects. The discovery of ancient mining sites and desert roads, some extending hundreds of kilometers into the arid interior, speaks volumes about their determination and their ability to conquer even the most unforgiving landscapes. The protection offered by the desert, however, was not absolute. Throughout their long history, Egypt faced occasional incursions from desert peoples, highlighting the constant need for vigilance and defense, even from seemingly impenetrable natural barriers. The symbiotic relationship between the Nile and the desert also influenced their mythology. The god Set, associated with the desert, was often depicted as a chaotic and destructive force, yet he was also a powerful deity, capable of protecting Re during his nightly journey through the underworld. This complex portrayal reflects the Egyptians' nuanced understanding of their environment, recognizing that even elements perceived as dangerous could possess beneficial aspects. The desert, while threatening, also provided a sense of boundaries and definition to their world. It was the wild, untamed frontier against which the ordered, civilized world of the Nile Valley was defined. This contrast provided a framework for their understanding of the cosmos, where order Mahat was perpetually engaged in a struggle with chaos, Isfet, yet both were necessary for the universe to function. The ancient Egyptians' meticulous observation of the stars and celestial bodies was also linked to the Nile's cycle. The heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, coincided almost perfectly with the beginning of the Nile's annual flood. This astronomical event was not just a marker of time, it was a divine signal, a celestial confirmation of the imminent renewal of the land. This precise correlation between celestial phenomena and earthly events reinforced their belief in a divinely ordered universe, where every element played a part in a grand cosmic design. Their sophisticated astronomical knowledge, evidenced by the alignment of temples and pyramids with specific stars and constellations, was deeply intertwined with their religious beliefs and their practical need to predict the Nile's behavior. The monuments themselves, especially the pyramids and temples, stand as enduring testaments to this profound connection with their environment and their understanding of eternity. Built from the enduring stone quarried from the desert, they were designed to withstand the ravages of time, much like the Nile itself, seemed eternal. Their placement, often on the desert edge overlooking the fertile valley, visually reinforced the duality of life and death, order and chaos. The precise engineering and astronomical alignments of these structures suggest a civilization deeply attuned to its surroundings, capable of harnessing both natural resources and intellectual prowess to create lasting legacies. The sheer scale of these constructions required immense organization, labor, and a shared vision, all underpinned by the stability and resources provided by the Nile. Even the concept of Kemet and Deshret extended to the colors used in their art. Black, representing the fertile soil of the Nile, was often associated with rebirth and the underworld, as Osiris, the god of the afterlife, was frequently depicted with black skin. Red, reflecting the color of the desert sands, could symbolize danger and chaos, but also life and vitality, as seen in the red crown of Lower Egypt. These color associations were not arbitrary, they were deeply embedded in their environmental observations and their cosmological beliefs, adding another layer of meaning to their visual culture. The very palette of their artistic expression was dictated by the landscape that surrounded them. The Nile also facilitated communication and trade, acting as the primary highway of ancient Egypt. Boats were the most efficient means of transport, allowing for the movement of goods, people, and ideas throughout the length of the kingdom. This easy internal communication fostered a sense of national unity and facilitated the administration of a vast and geographically elongated state. Without the Nile, such a unified kingdom would have been far more difficult to maintain, as overland travel across the desert would have been arduous and slow. The constant flow of the river, therefore, was not only vital for sustenance, but also for cohesion and governance. This internal network allowed for the efficient distribution of food surpluses, ensuring that even in times of localized hardship, the entire kingdom could be supported. In essence, the ancient Egyptians did not merely live in their environment, they were profoundly shaped by it. The unique juxtaposition of the fertile Nile Valley and the vast arid desert created a worldview steeped in concepts of duality, balance, and cosmic order. This geographical reality informed their religion, their politics, their art, and their very understanding of existence. The Nile was the lifeblood, the giver of all good things, while the desert, though dangerous, provided protection and essential resources. Together, these two powerful forces forged a civilization that endured for millennia, a testament to their remarkable ability to adapt, innovate, and create profound meaning from the world around them. Their story is a powerful reminder of how intimately human cultures are intertwined with the landscapes they inhabit, and how the physical world can profoundly influence the spiritual and intellectual realms of a civilization.